Hello, everybody, and thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Catherine Kramer, and I am here to introduce our lightning talk speaker, Michele Gilman. And this is one of a series of lightning talks being held in conjunction with our COVID-19 Data Challenge, brought to you by the Border Solutions Alliance and the West Big Data Innovation Hub. I'm very honored and pleased to be introducing Michele. She's the Venable Professor of Law at the University of Baltimore School of Law, and she directs the Saul Ewing Civil Advocacy Clinic, in which student attorneys represent individuals and community groups in a wide array of civil litigation and law reform projects. She also teaches administrative law and evidence, and in addition, she serves as the co-director for the Center on Applied Feminism, which works to apply the insights of feminist legal theory to legal practice and policy. Her recent scholarship focuses on the intersection of data privacy and poverty, with articles published in the California Law Review, Vanderbilt Law Review, and Washington University Law Review, among others, as well as in the media, including Huffington Post, Salon, and The Conversation. Michele is going to talk on data justice and automated decision-making systems. Thanks, Michele.
Thank you, Catherine, for that nice introduction. And it's a pleasure to be here with you today to talk about data justice and automated decision-making systems. Part of data literacy is understanding the justice and equality implications of automated decision-making systems. Technological advances are undoubtedly improving so many aspects of modern life, but there are technologically caused harms as well, and they tend to be borne by the most vulnerable communities. As a lawyer, I'm here to tell you that law alone will not solve these problems. Law is not nimble or nuanced enough. We are all in this together, and it's essential that data and computer scientists, software designers, engineers, and programmers all understand the power that they hold and that connection to social justice. So today I'm going to discuss 5 examples of data injustice that arise from automated decision-making systems, each to illustrate a specific takeaway point for achieving data justice. Here's our first example. Algorithms are used by the healthcare industry for commercial risk prediction, affecting 200 million people in the United States each year. One algorithm identifies patients who should receive high-risk care management programs. Patients who are tagged with complex health needs get additional resources, such as greater attention from doctors, teams of dedicated nurses, and the like. The goal here is a worthy one: to improve patient outcomes and satisfaction while reducing healthcare costs. A group of researchers, cited here on my slide, studied the algorithm's impact on patients by race. They identified that the algorithm relied on a patient's past healthcare costs to predict their future healthcare needs. This sounds fine. Race is not fed into the algorithm. Seems objective. But here's the problem. If you look at patients who have the same level of health, Black Americans generate lower healthcare costs than whites. Why does this happen if they're equally sick? Well, it's because Black patients face barriers to healthcare. This is due to a variety of factors such as geography, differential access to transportation, competing demands from childcare and jobs, and reduced trust in the healthcare system. This means that if you compare white and Black patients with the same risk score under the algorithm, Black patients were actually much sicker than the white patients. When researchers eliminated this past cost factor from the algorithm, the percent of Black patients receiving additional help rose from around 18% to 46.5%. Okay, it's important to note here there was no intent to discriminate, but the algorithm discriminated nonetheless. It embedded structural bias in our healthcare system in how it formulated its choice of the problem. Now let's talk about automation bias. Algorithms are increasingly used to predict a defendant's risk of committing another crime for sentencing purposes, as well as bail determinations. ProPublica journalists studied an algorithm called COMPAS, which claims to predict recidivism based on an analysis of a 137 questionnaire. In 2016, ProPublica analyzed COMPAS assessments for more than 7,000 arrestees in Broward County, Florida. They found, and I quote, "Blacks are almost twice as likely as whites to be labeled a higher risk, but not actually reoffend. While COMPAS makes the opposite mistake among whites. They are much more likely than Blacks to be labeled lower risk, but go on to commit other crimes," unquote. In short, this means that Black defendants who would not reoffend are sitting in jail, while white defendants who will reoffend are set free. As with the healthcare algorithm, race is not a factor in COMPAS's algorithm in terms of what's fed into the data. But there are other factors that serve as proxies for race. Consider, for example, where a person lives. Minority neighborhoods are more heavily policed, leading to inflated arrest statistics for those residents. This could make Black defendants more prone to high-risk scores simply by virtue of where they live. So as with the healthcare example, this algorithm raises the specter of digital discrimination, but I want to focus on automation bias. Here's the problem. Judges do not know how the algorithm works. And because it is machine generated, they may overvalue its recommendations. And this is a psychological phenomena called automation bias. It refers to the tendency to ascribe greater power and authority to automated aids than to other sources of advice. People subconsciously prefer to delegate difficult tasks to machines, which we view as powerful agents with superior capability and objectivity. And the more difficult the task and the less time there is to do it, the more powerful this bias can become. I've experienced it in my own practice with the student attorneys that I teach in my law clinic, finding that judges can be really bedazzled by computer outputs, especially because they are skeptical of human biases, which can range from racism to laziness to fatigue and more. But this unquestioned faith in computers is misguided for so many reasons, because computers are not magic. Algorithms are created by people and thus embody all the biases of their creators. Thus, the saying within computer science, garbage in, garbage out. Indeed, a study from Dartmouth found that the COMPAS algorithm is no better at predicting an individual's risk of recidivism than random volunteers recruited from the internet, making their best educated guesses. The accuracy of the human group was 67%, while the accuracy of COMPAS was 65%. Now let's talk about the problem of social sorting in the context of college admissions. Many college admission offices are secretly tracking high schoolers who visit their websites. Last year, one software provider alone tracked 20 million unique web visitors to college websites. The software tells the colleges what websites were visited, how often, and by whom. It can then pair the visitor to a personalized profile that includes test scores, zip codes, high school transcripts, academic interests, web browsing histories, ethnic backgrounds, and household income. Colleges then use these profiles to target certain students for recruiting. The algorithms score these potential students on a variety of factors that colleges are validly interested in: the likelihood of applying, of attending, graduating, and the ability to pay tuition. Many colleges are looking for students who can pay the costs of full tuition. And this strategy risks leaving out underprivileged kids from the college recruiting process. This is just one way of many that people are sorted every day based on their digital profiles. These profiles determine whether you can rent a house, get a job, obtain credit, the price you will pay for insurance, and so forth. Digital profiling is very much becoming a gatekeeper to life opportunities, with the risk of cementing people into their socioeconomic class without opportunities for social mobility. Another concern is a lack of transparency, which I'll discuss in the context of employment. Algorithms are increasingly being deployed by employers to assist them in hiring. One algorithm designed by the recruiting technology firm HireVue is used in interviewing. Applicants participate in online interviews, and the software then analyzes their facial movements, word choice, and speaking voice, among other things, in order to grant them an automatically generated employability score. More than 100 employers now use the system, and more than 1 million job seekers have been analyzed. The problem is that we don't know what the algorithm is measuring or how it weighs these various factors. There's no transparency. The algorithm is a black box. We know the inputs, we know the outputs, but as members of the public, we don't know what's happening inside the box. And makers of algorithms can hide behind claims of trade secrecy and legally refuse to provide explanations. So college career counseling offices across the country are struggling in how to guide their students to prepare for and perform during these online interviews. Job candidates are never told their score or what little things they got wrong, and they certainly can't ask the machine how they could do better next time. There are serious concerns that these systems may end up penalizing non-native English speakers, visibly nervous interviewees, disabled people, or anyone who doesn't fit the algorithm's model for the ideal look and speech patterns. Inaccuracy is the final challenge to data justice that I'll discuss today, and in the context of facial recognition technology. So facial recognition technology uses algorithms to identify individuals based on computerized analysis of their facial features. Facial recognition systems compare existing images, such as those held by the Department of Motor Vehicles, to images of unknown people in order to identify them. This technology is widely used by law enforcement, as well as in commercial settings, such as retail stores and stadiums, and it's increasingly being used in airports. The FBI's Next Generation ID system maintains a facial recognition database with photos of more than 117 million Americans. While there have been striking advances with this technology, it is more inaccurate for some groups than others. It is particularly inaccurate for women of color. When the person in the photo is a white man, one study found that the software is right 99% of the time. But for darker skinned women, the error rate was 35%. An ACLU study of Amazon's facial recognition system used photos of every member of Congress and scanned for matches against a mugshot database. 28 members of Congress were erroneously identified as matching someone in the mugshot database. How does this happen? Another study found that the training data that the algorithmic model learns from was estimated to be more than 75% male and more than 80% white. These inaccuracies have consequences. They can result in misidentification, entanglement with the criminal justice system and possibly lead to wrongful convictions. Data inaccuracies are a serious problem in automated decision-making. As I said before, garbage in, garbage out. It's probably clear at this point that each example I just talked about itself raises all of the takeaway points that I've mentioned as potential barriers to data justice: digital discrimination, automation bias, social sorting, lack of transparency, and inaccuracy. And part of being data literate is understanding these dynamics so we can prevent them going forward. On this slide, From Data Ethics to Data Justice, from the book Data Feminism, challenges us to think about justice in a very, very expansive way. It challenges us to think beyond individualized and technical remedies for data injustice to structural reforms that challenge power differentials within our society. And I personally find this slide a very transformative and inspirational way to think about data justice. If you're interested in delving more deeply into the concept that I've talked about, there are incredible resources that I have posted here on my Algorithmic Justice bookshelf. And each of them provides outstanding explanations for both technical experts and lay people and lawyers such as myself, really anyone, to understand all these various implications of data justice, including from a racial justice perspective. So there's a lot more to read and a lot more to learn. And with that, I am happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Michele. Very inspiring, terrific talk. And while we're seeing if there are questions that people want to put in either the chat or the Q&A on your screen, I've got a couple of questions. So as we're starting now, forming teams, and our teams are getting their ideas together for what they want to work on, this is a general question, and then I have a specific one. Is there anything like a checklist or just a quick collection of things to be sure that you're thinking about some of the issues you raised about data privacy, data justice, data bias, that people could have in their minds as they're starting to look at these data sets and put their project together?
Yeah, there are some checklists that various groups have put together that really focus around the area of data ethics, and those are links that I'd be happy to share with you after today's talk. But every list can be improved as we learn and study more about areas in which intended uses go awry. So even the best checklist is something that needs to continue to evolve and be informed by what we're seeing on the ground.
Right. So the specific part of that question would be for a project. We today just had one of our team matching events. So this is where groups are starting to talk about their projects. And one of the really fantastic ideas that the group I was working with was talking about had to do with mental health and data related to mental health. So obviously there are a lot of issues there about people wanting to make sure their data is private and so forth. Do you have advice for that group in particular, or anybody working with super sensitive data like that, how to make sure that they do keep their data, their facts and data private?
Right. Well, actually, this is an area where you definitely don't want to get in trouble because it raises issues potentially under the Americans with Disabilities Act, HIPAA, variety of privacy statutes designed to protect healthcare information. Might be worth consulting with an attorney just to make sure that you don't inadvertently cross any lines that you shouldn't. Of course, very secure anonymization is essential, and that's obviously something that requires a great deal of technical expertise. And this is often a challenge because we need large data sets to come up with meaningful solutions, and they often raise privacy issues. And so it's essential to both recognize the value of open data, but also the privacy of the people who make up those data sets. So I think that's an outstanding concern to keep your eye on as you develop those projects. And there are legal parameters that have to be observed.
That actually raises a question from the other side, looking at it from the other side of the equation, which is, as you mentioned, there's a lot of apprehension about, do we really need to wear masks? Can I really catch, the virus in this situation, that situation? So that's kind of looking at it from the other side. How do you reassure people that the data that is being used to make these decisions is responsible and accurate and just and fair data?
Right. Well, a lot of it depends on the approach that the scientists use in gathering and collecting the data and respecting the privacy. And the best studies in this field will be peer reviewed. They will have taken steps to anonymize the data, which is nothing new to healthcare researchers. They know how to do this. They've done it for a very, very long time. And within the scientific community, there are clear protocols, not just for the privacy, but then for the analysis of the data. That's why we rely so heavily on peer review. Things are moving so fast now. We hear a lot of results of studies that haven't gone through peer review yet, and it doesn't mean they're invalid, but it's not really the gold standard until it has that peer review seal of certification. And it's certainly not the gold standard if you just read a theory on Twitter. So there's just a lot of data misinformation in this space as well, and we have to be skeptical consumers and all that we're being bombarded with.
Right. So skeptical, good word to keep in our mind. So sounds like in addition to putting your team together, people who are working with these kinds of data really should work to identify somebody. Either I think you mentioned an attorney, or maybe an attorney would be the best sort of person to bounce these ideas off of and check with them. Does that sound right? Or is there
for folks, sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. For folks affiliated with a university, your general counsel's office, these are the sorts of issues they understand. They're regularly dealing with student privacy, patient privacy, a variety of privacy statutes, IRBs that are in place for studies on human subjects. So anyone affiliated with the university probably has access to a lawyer very well versed in this who could make sure the parameters of the study design are legally compliant.
Great. Well, those are really important things for our teams to keep in mind as they're moving forward. And I think that brings us to almost the end of our time. Thank you so much, Michele. This is such an important part of this whole process, and I'm really happy that you were able to take the time and bring these ideas to our data challenge participants. Very important. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me, and best of luck with these very important and exciting studies.
Thanks, Michele. Bye-bye.
Bye.